This is the Pardo Endurance 60. When this boat launched, it marked a real change in direction for Pardo. Up until that point, it had been open boats only. Then suddenly they built a 60-footer with a fully enclosed wheelhouse and a flybridge. And it sort of occupies a niche of its own. It kind of competes with the Absolute 58 Fly, the Serena 58 and even the Blue Game BGX 60. But it's certainly a boat that is doing things its own way. And in this review, I'm going to show you why that is. And what about pricing? Well, it starts from about 1.75 million excluding VAT with the smallest IPS engines. This one here, to a very high spec, is around €2.5 million excluding VAT. Let's see what it can do. I'm Jack Haines, welcome to YachtBuyer. Let's just delve into that pricing a little bit more, shall we, before we talk about how it drives. I said this boat's about 2.5 million ex VAT to spec, and it is pretty much as highly spec'd as a Pardo E60 can be. You could have the hard top or the T-top, but apart from that, this boat's got pretty much everything. All of the folding, opening, sliding stuff that we're going to show you down in the cockpit later on. It's got air conditioning, teak absolutely everywhere, crew cabin, you name it. If there's a box to tick on the option list, this boat has got it. So hopefully that frames the pricing a little bit for you. How about driving? Well, as I said, there are two IPS engine options, IPS 700 or IPS 800. This one's got IPS 800, which is 600 horsepower per side. And that is not a huge amount of horsepower for a 60-foot boat. Look at the Azimut Maslano 60, for example, which I tested relatively recently. That's got twin MAN 730 horsepower engines. So performance is never going to be what this boat is about. If you want a 30-knot cruiser, this isn't the boat for you. However, if you're happy to top out at more like 22 to 25 knots and cruise at 20 knots, well, hello, welcome to the Endurance 60. Endurance is in the name, and really that is what it's about. It's about those longer cruises. And suddenly when you can't do 30 knots, everything just feels a lot more relaxing. We're sitting here very happily at 17, 18 knots here, and it's sedate, it's refined, there's no crashing, there's no slamming. It is a planing hull, but there's no real sense of it getting onto the plane. It just sort of pushes through the water at ever faster speeds. It's a really nice sensation, actually. And yeah, if you want to go places fast, not the boat for you. If you want to get places and enjoy the journey and be relaxed, it's great. I mean, it's nice and quiet up here. You can probably tell from the driving position that it's about detachment. If I sit back in this seat, I'm a long way away from the helm. If I want to be engaged with everything, then I've got to sit forward. And that sort of tells you all you need to know about what this boat's designed for. Put it on autopilot, put it at 20 knots, sit back and just waft along very comfortably, very quietly. It's not super rough out here today. There's a bit of chop, is, 20 knots of breeze probably, bit of tide running 3 to 4 knots at times. So it's not had it all going its own way, but it's dealt with it all so comfortably. And I was a little bit, I suppose, surprised by the initial feeling of performance, but the more I've used it, the more I've begun to understood what this boat is about. And even though I'm a little bit far away from everything, the helm layout is actually pretty good. I've got 2 MFDs up here, so I've got great oversight over everything. Obviously everything's integrated into the Garmin screens. There's a few buttons down here for the stuff you're going to use regularly, but really everything's contained in the MFDs. There's space for somebody else up here. There's a bit of storage with the cup holders. Could probably do with a bit more storage for loose items, but it's not too bad. Got a good view from up here. It's a good job you can't go very fast because there's not a huge amount of protection from the windscreen. But on a day like this, sitting up here, it's absolutely lovely, to be honest. But of course, one of the most attractive things is if you really want to cover your hard yards in the quiet, you've got a lower helm position. So let's go and see what it's like from down there. Feels like a good time to ask you to subscribe to the channel before we head downstairs, before the tour begins. Make sure you subscribe, hit the button, hit the bell icon, and you'll never miss one of our sea trials. Right, we're downstairs now, and we're also heading into the wind, which we weren't doing upstairs to keep the wind off the microphone. And the most impressive thing is how quiet it still is. There's a decent enough chop here. It's not massive, but you know, it's not nothing. And the key thing is the engines are so remote, you really don't get a sense of them at all. And when I took my sound readings earlier, it doesn't get to 70 decibels even at full speed. It's really impressive. You know, you're charging along at 22 knots there and you're still under 70 decibels. And what that often does is highlight the noises from the hull. That does not happen on this boat. It feels really solid upwind, and because it's not a semi-displacement boat, it's got that planing hull, it doesn't wallow around and get stuck in troughs and need constant overcorrection. It sits so straight and narrow and true, even in a bit of a chop, even downwind. It's a very easy boat to drive this. As you can see, I mean, I'm just sort of sitting here letting it get on with it. We're doing that 17 knot cruising speed that I mentioned, and it's just hoovering it up. It's also a dry ride. I mean, you can see the hull. You can see in the drone shots what a clean hull shape it's got. It's also got that sort of slight reverse shear on it that is so typical of Pardo. But very few spots on what is a massive single piece windscreen that's inwardly raked. It gives it that really purposeful profile. It also means that any spray will clear off it more easily. And they've cleverly worked in these little side windows so you haven't got huge blind spots. Often with a single piece screen, that means big blind spots. Not on this boat. The all-round view is very, very good. So driving experience is excellent as long as you don't want to go too fast. Range, well, at that 17 knot speed, you're probably looking at around 220 nautical miles. If you drop it back to 8 knots, it's well over 700 nautical miles. You've got 2,500 litres of fuel on board. So if you just want to cover ground, you can slow it right down and it really will cover those miles. Handling, well, talking about handling on this thing is like talking about the handling on a Winnebago. It's not really the point. But, you know, it's IPS, so the steering is at least very light. It doesn't really heel in any sort of way, but it does change direction. And it will eventually turn around 180 degrees, but really it's not a boat that's designed for fast handling. It is a boat designed for going in a straight line. As I've already said, if you want to do that, it will do it nice and comfortably. What isn't quite as comfortable is the helm position. You can probably see how I'm just sitting slightly awkwardly. I'm having to perch on the edge to get close to everything. The throttles are too far away from the wheel. If I sit right back, again, I'm way too far from everything. I'm dying for a slightly bigger footrest as well. It's got this slightly strange bolster situation where you fold the seat, but that, again, I'm a bit too close to the wheel, just standing a bit too high. The neither position feels particularly natural. There is a little bit of work for them to do, I think, on the geometry of the helm, which is a shame because the ride is so comfortable. It's a helm where you want to just sit back and really appreciate the boat doing all the work, but I just feel quite literally on edge at the moment. The layout's fine though, you know, you've got the same sort of MFD setup as you've got upstairs, very clearly presented, and you've got a control for them as well as being able to use them. Touchscreen, again, you've got some hard buttons down here, and it's all in nice black anti-reflect material, so there's no glare to speak of. I just wish there was a little bit more adjustment at both helms. And the side door again comes into play. We'll talk about this a bit more when we head into the marina, but that's so valuable to have down here. Let's start the tour then on the 60 Endurance's main attraction, which is this cockpit. And it's really such a key part of the boat because obviously it's fully enclosed. You have got the Flybridge, but this just feels like the main living area. This is where you're going to want to be. And this is also where you're going to dive into the options, because between the hydraulic platform, the side platforms, the teak up here, the bimini, you're looking at about 150,000 euros worth of extras, but it really is them that make this area what it is. Of course, we have the high-low platform, which has a 600 kilogram weight capacity, so you can get a really decent tender on there. And what's quite nice is when it's down, right down, because it drops down a long way, there's a little lip left on the main deck, so you can still cross from side to side without having to go down onto the platform itself. But then the main talking point is these fold-out balconies, and these give you about 40 square meters of space when they're down. Really usefully extend the space of this cockpit. Of course, you have them on both sides. You can see there's some slots in the deck here. There are poles that you can put in here with some rope just to make them a little bit safe if you've got kids on board. But it's quite nice to have them open because then you can sit on the edge, you can draw up your paddleboard alongside your water sports toys, you can jump off. They're lovely. You could put some beanbags down here and really extend the usable living space down here. Of course, you have your central dining and sunbathing space. This is quite clever. You can see it's in dining mode here, but all three of these are on ratchets and they can come to different angles, but you can pull this forward and drop it right down. All three of them do that, and that's how you create your sunbathing space. The table is on a high-low mechanism as well, so you can drop that right down to the same level as the cushions and again extend the sunbathing space, or you can have it up like it is now and you have it in dining mode. And because you have this nice amount of space here between the table and the saloon, there is some space here for some freestanding furniture too. But on a day like this and the sun's blazing, this really does feel like the place you want to be. But of course, there's more deck spaces to enjoy. If we head forward, we'll start up at the bow. You'll notice that there are no guardrails. There's guardrails inboard, there are none on top of the bulwarks here, so you have slots for all the fenders. They've got little eyes that you loop through and then you clip them into the deck and then you pull the whole thing off when you want to stow them away. Nice details like big chunky pop-up cleats and midships here, and I mentioned the rail, yeah, so just when you move forward, when you might be going up to handle some lines or use the anchor, you have got a nice railing here to grab onto, but you do feel very safe. Yes, there aren't any tall rails, but these come up to a nice height and you're sandwiched between the coach roof and this area here as well. So it's a nice, safe boat to move around, nice wide side decks. Yeah, so it's a comfortable boat to crew. The side door plays into that as well. We've just walked past that. Talk a bit more about that inside, but yeah, you've got a side door as well, so that helps with crewing duties. And they've made quite a lot of this area as well. Obviously you have your nice big sun pad. This hatch lifts off because there's obviously an overhead light down here for the VIP cabin, but then you've got two benches down here. So you've got one that faces forward, we get 3 people on there. You've got a little couples bench here so people can sit looking opposite them, and it just makes a bit more of this space because underneath here is where you find the anchor hatch. It's quite the anchor mechanism. It's a through hull arrangement where this sort of protective case pushes out and then the roller comes through and the anchor drops down. So you want to have good access to it because there's quite a lot going on there, but thankfully this lifts up and does give you a nice amount of access to that space. And it's deep as well, so you can store your fenders in there. It's got big fenders, this boat. We've got most of them in the crew cabin, but if you don't want to always have to use the crew cabin, you can get a few of them in there as well. That's the main deck then. Let's go and have a look at what the Flybridge has in store. The Flybridge is so discreetly integrated into the design of this boat. If they didn't have the bimini up, you might almost not know it's here. And actually, talking the bimini, this is one option, about 25,000 euros. It is hydraulic, so you push a button, it folds down and folds up, and it's got some lights built in, which is nice. But you can have a T-top, not one I'd go for, I don't think, because I think the beauty of this boat is that the Flybridge is so well hidden. You really wouldn't know it's here. From profile, it looks like a sort of wheelhouse boat, but yeah, you got the Flybridge up here and it gives you a pretty useful extra bit of living space. It's a pretty simple space up here. It's not as well specified as the likes of the Sona 58 or the Absolute 58 Fly, but it does give you useful extra and of course elevated living space. Completely clear space aft. They don't have a furniture option there. That's for putting freestanding furniture, sun lounges, that sort of thing. But you've got some furniture here. This is a two-way backrest, so obviously it's in helm station mode at the moment, but you can flip this way and make a sort of mini sun pad over on this side, and then you have just pure sunbathing space behind me. You can add some options up here. You can have a table if you want. In fact, this boat has got it. We just haven't got it fitted in at the moment, but there is a table option up here. There's also fridges. We've got 2 fridges down here. I didn't mention it actually, but there are a couple in the cockpit as well. Again, they're under the seats. Drawer fridges just means you've got access to cold drinks without having to go into the saloon. So yeah, it's not as thoroughly specified as its rivals, but it still gives you that extra deck and crucially somewhere else to drive from. Let's head inside. It's not just the cockpit that's full of tricks, because there's plenty of folding and opening going on here in the saloon as well. You have this bifold door here that pins right over to the port side, and then here we have a window that pops up. Everything is controlled with a button on this boat, and this is another item. But yeah, this window just pops up like this. Obviously when it's fully out, it sort of connects to the overhang here, and this is what's giving you that great connection between these two areas. And with no wet bar on deck, it's quite important for the galley to be close to the cockpit and of course the Flybridge, and it is. It's very easy to pop inside here, grab a drink from the fridges. There's 2 down here, there's 1 on the counter, and you're back out on deck. And the other thing to point out on a breezy day like this is that you also have, as a cost option, drop down electric windows on both sides. There's a button in the middle. Of course there's a button in the middle. That's because the blinds are also electric. You don't have to do anything for yourself on this boat. It's great for if you're feeling lazy. And there you go, everything's open. We've got a bit too much of a breeze running through, to be honest, because you've also got the side door forward, which we could open. But yeah, if you don't want to have to rely on the air conditioning, of course in really hot climates you always will have to, but here today, 26, 27 degree day in the UK, the amount of lovely natural breeze coming through this saloon is great, and the connection's superb. And I like the fact that they've split the galley as well, so you've got a bit of counter over there where you've got your cooking, you've got a double sink over here, which is a really good size with this posh tap that has a twisty bit on it. This is split. You've got a cooler in the top here, you've got your dishwasher here on the end. Not huge, but pretty good for a 60 footer. What you will notice is there isn't space for full height fridge freezer, but you have a good combination of cooling because you have this top loading cooler here. They're always really handy, very easy to get to, very easy to fill up as well. And then on both sides you have identical under counter isotherm fridges. So they clearly recognise that they haven't got space for a domestic fridge freezer here, but they've really tried to fit as much cooling space as they can in. Aside from that, storage up there, storage up there. Storage is actually really good. There's even a nice big drawer here. They've managed to work this around the sink and you've got deep drawer space there. They've done a very good job of incorporating as much storage space as they can. Of course, Pardo's mother company builds sailing yachts, and a lot of that practical stuff is seen here on the Endurance, like the fiddled edging, all of that storage, the top loading fridge. Those are things that I recognise from my times on sailing boats. Moving forward, we have a bit of a bar area here. You have yet more cooling space. This is actually a wine fridge, but again, that's going to take care of the most important stuff that you want to cool. Then we have this nice little area here where you have a sort of backlit glass store where you've got all the branded up Pardo glassware in there. That's really nicely done. And then just some drawer storage down here. It's a little bit austere in this colour scheme. So you've got the light oak, you've also got white counters. It definitely needs the colour of things like scatter cushions and Simona's Possessions. But it does feel high quality, and I've tested all of the open Pardos, and that is a running theme. They do feel like very high quality boats. It feels very solid underfoot. The woodwork is lovely. There's no creaking, there's no squeaking. It all feels nice and solid. Yeah, it feels like a high quality machine. This is obviously your main internal chill out area, your internal dinette. This has got a high-low mechanism on it as well. Obviously it opens up so it can double in size. You can adjust it down to sort of coffee table or have it up if you're watching television or working or whatever you want to do. Eating, of course, you may want to eat. This is a year-round boat after all, so you may well have some meals at this inside dinette. Down here we have the switchboard, very handily located right underneath the helm, so you can see all the digital switching down here, make sure everything's doing what it should be. And then right forward, adjacent to the helm, you just have some nice big storage down here. Very useful space just to chuck some odds and ends, loose items go in there very nicely. And then, you know, I mentioned the side door earlier, but that is such a great addition on a boat like this to be able to not only ventilate but get out onto the side decks really easily from this lower helm. That's the main deck then. Let's head downstairs and have a look at the accommodation. There's a 3-cabin, 3-bathroom arrangement down here on the lower deck of the Endurance 60, so it's a very private arrangement. You have a day heads here, but this also has direct access into the twin cabin, which is here on the port side, and that's a good cabin. There's lots of headroom in there. Often these can feel a little bit compromised, even at this size, but this one really doesn't. The berths are a good size, there's a nice amount of space between them, good amount of storage, and it's got all the nice finishing lighting that you get in the other 2 cabins. But of course the main event on a boat of this size is the owner's cabin, and on this boat it's a midships, so let's go and have a look at that. Now there isn't an enormous kind of communal lobby on this boat, that feels quite tight, but the benefit is that gives them a huge amount of space to play with here in this owner's cabin, where you have this lovely hallway that gradually goes down onto lower deck level and spreads out into the cabin. But this feels like you're on a much bigger boat in here, and it continues in the ensuite, which is vast. Headroom, especially in the shower, is absolutely towering. There's loads of space in there, good amount of storage. It's really nicely appointed, and that continues as you move into the cabin. Down here, I should point out, you have your washer dryer option if you want one. That's in there. Big hanging locker here as you come on into the cabin, and it just spreads out and really devours the full beam of the boat. This is a really lovely living space. It does feel more than just a cabin. You have your fixed bureau here with the television above, nice sofa over there on the starboard side, and then just storage everywhere. This is all storage behind me here of all different shapes and sizes. Drawers, this well down here, these 3 massively deep voids that drop down here, they're absolutely enormous. Bookshelves up here and a really nice use of lighting. I mentioned about the quality up in the saloon, and it continues down here. It does feel very cleverly put together. It's really high quality stuff. You can see your air conditioning vents are all quite neatly integrated here. The only slight downside is as you move towards the back of the cabin, for someone who's 6 foot, you just got to watch your head on this. Of course, you'll probably be heading into bed at this stage, so it's not too much of an issue, and there's plenty of space to sit up in bed and read, and you've got a mix of spotlights, reading lights, you've got chargers down here by the bed. Of course, there's buttons to push. They control the blinds in here, so you can lie in bed and open the blinds. It's a lovely, lovely space. It really is, and feels way bigger than a 60-footer. It's a really clever trick they play down here. Of course, there's one final cabin to look at, and that's the VIP in the bow. I come back to the privacy point. We're here in the VIP, right forward in the boat, nice big double bed, and your own bathroom, which isn't shared with another bathroom. So it is totally private, and it's a really nice space. Again, headroom is huge. This boat does hide its height very well from the outside, but inside, the levels of headroom are pretty extraordinary. There's loads of space over the bed as well to sit up and read. You've got nice graduated steps on both sides. It's not set very high at all, actually, this bed, but you've still got steps up either side, which are both handy for getting in and also to give you a platform to put bits and bobs, your phone, things like that. Pictures of supermodels you've never met. There's all lots of space for loose odds and ends on this boat, and of course they're by plugs as well, so you can charge things overnight. And again, there are a couple of switches for the blinds, and there's a decent amount of natural ventilation as well. We've got a hatch overhead, we've got hatches here at eye level, and we've got opening hatches within the windows too. Again, storage is decent, hanging lockers on both sides, storage underneath the bed, and another really impressive ensuite. It's not quite as big as the owners, but it's still very good. Again, excellent levels of headroom and a nice separate shower cubicle. Really well executed living spaces down below on this boat. From here then, let's go and have a look at the crew cabin. You don't expect much from the crew space on a boat of this length, but actually the Pardo's is pretty good. It's a clever layout because you come down centrally, there's obviously access through this hatch in the transom, and then you have 2 berths, one that way, one that way, and they're both a pretty good size. Your feet go at that end, your head go at this end. You've got reasonable headroom above your head. There's a bit of natural ventilation as well as air conditioning in here. Storage isn't amazing. You've got some trays down here, and then you've got a couple of cupboards on either side, but really for a boat that's unlikely to be crew run, this is quite a useful extra space. It's about 30,000 euros. Obviously, if you don't use it as a crew space, you can still use it for storage. We chucked all the fenders in here today. You can see there's some spares in here at the moment. So it's got that hybrid use, but actually, as a sleeping space, it's really not too bad. And the other key thing is it's got a pretty good bathroom. It's a wet room, of course. The headroom is, again, very, very good. And this is quite a useful place to have a bathroom because it means people can come off the bathing platform if they've been swimming down here, use the loo or shower and not have to go into the boat. And the final thing about this area is that you have direct access into the engine room through this watertight door. So you can pop that open and in you go. The only downside is the generator's in the way, so the door doesn't open fully. But if you're slim enough, you could get through there into the engine room. But there is separate access through the cockpit, so let's head down there now. Now what is a rather small opening in the deck gives way to a really good engine room actually. As I mentioned, this is the door in from the crew cabin. But getting down that ladder is easy enough. You drop right down on top of the gyro stabiliser if you've got it. And obviously this is right in the middle of the engine room. It does make it easy to get to, I suppose, but it's just a bit strange to see the generator right in the middle of anything. But then there is a lot of space between the engines to play with. You can get around them both sides really easily. Getting down to the pods isn't too difficult. Of course, you have to lift up the floor of the crew cabin to get really good access, but in terms of checking them by eye, you can do that really easily from here. And it's really nicely installed as well. It's very neat, it's very tidy. There's lots and lots of sound insulation, hence why it's so quiet when you're out at sea. And it's little things like having the fuel tanks so accessible. You've also got sight gauges so you can see the fuel level, and they've even got the literage there so you can really see quite clearly how much fuel you've got in each tank, and access to the filters, the raw water feed, the fuel filters is all really easy. So day-to-day stuff should be very simple. Impressive stuff. The last thing to talk about then is slow speed handling, so let's head to the marina and see what she's like. Well, when it comes to slow speed manoeuvrability, this being an IPS boat makes the whole business of that really very easy. Obviously you've got an IPS joystick down here, there's one on the Flybridge, and you can option one in the cockpit as well, which if you're going to be mooring stern to on a regular basis, you're probably going to want, because although the all-round view is pretty good from down here, you can only just see the very tip of the bathing platform. So yeah, if you're going to be stern mooring a lot, I'd have that. In terms of control, as I said, we've got the larger engines on this boat, and they make light work of moving this thing around at slow speed. The wind's actually died off a bit, so it's not having to put up with much in terms of conditions, but it's really smooth, and actually you get a really positive engagement whether you're twisting, whether you're pushing sideways. It's not always the case, they always act slightly differently, but this one does feel very, very well integrated. It has got a bow thruster as well as an option. It is an option, it doesn't come as standard, but you know what I'm going to say, you're probably going to want it because it just gives you that little bit of control over the bow, which you may want now and then. You may not always want the whole boat to move sideways, you may just want the bow to do so, so having the bow thruster does help. But in terms of joystick control, it all feels really good on the Pardo. What to make of the Endurance 60 then? Well, if you like the idea of a Saxdor or an Axopar, but they're just not big enough for you, then have a look at this. And equally, if you like the idea of a Targa or a Sargo, but you want something a little bit bigger, a bit softer with a bit more Italian flair, well again, this fits the bill perfectly. But the overwhelming thing for me, apart from this amazing cockpit, is well done to Pardo for embracing what everyone's thinking. Let's move a bit more slowly. Why are we charging around trying to do 30, 35 knots on 60-foot boats? Let's just slow it down a little bit, enjoy the ride, enjoy the fact that you're not being banged around, that you can just softly plough through the waves, which is exactly what this did today so comfortably. It does things its own way, that's for sure, but it's a really convincing, rounded package. But let me know what you'd have. Would you have this, a Serena 58, or a Blue Game BGX 60? I'd be interested to know. Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed that sea trial and in-depth review of the Pardo Endurance 60. If you did, please do give the video a like. If you want to watch one of our reviews of another wheelhouse cruiser, well, we tested the Sargo 45 in Finland, and you can watch that if you click up here. If you want to watch more of our sea trials, you can click on this box down here. And if you'd like to subscribe, please click up here. Thanks for watching.